Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I'm excited to have with me today. I don't get to interview too many men for some reason, so I'm really excited when I have a male guest, especially a male guest who's going to talk about mental health. Because if you've listened to my show for any amount of time, you know I'm a huge mental health advocate. You know I encourage men and women, anyone, to seek support. It's okay to struggle. We all have a struggle. And if you need support, please reach out. There's the crisis hotline, 988 in the U.S., and always seek your primary care physician in your area for mental health resources. It is so important. I'm going to tell you about my guest, the wonderful Mitch Webb, that's W-E-B-B. He has a business, Integrative Health Coaching. He is a holistic health and somatic coach. He offers one-on-one somatic coaching. He's been a certified health coach since 2016. He does personalized support for healing. He helps high performers, entrepreneurs, and those struggling with chronic symptoms reconnect with their bodies and reclaim their energy. After years of burnout and trying ever a quick fix, Mitch discovered that true healing begins when we learn to regulate the nervous system and live in alignment with it. Oh, I can't wait to have this conversation. So I want to welcome Mitch Webb to Chatting with Betsy.
Betsy, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm excited to be here, especially as your first male, it sounds like.
Well, not my first male, but it's I just interviewed someone yesterday, but it was about AI. But as far as mental health, not too many men, or caregiving, as a matter of fact, not too many men do I have as guests for some reason. But when I do get a request, I'm so happy to have a male perspective. Because, as I'm sure you've probably known, Mitch, that when men are seeking support, it's frowned upon in our society. And I've been trying to change that with my little voice here in New Jersey. I've been a mental health advocate for many, many years. I myself go for counseling now. I've gone for counseling starting as a teenager, back in the 70s when it was not popular and it was frowned upon. And I think in a lot of professions, Mitch, especially male-dominated professions, it is looked down upon, and we need to change that. But I want to start off with, what is an integrative health coach? What is it exactly that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to start there. You know, it's me trying really hard to say what I do and get people to understand it, which typically takes a 45-minute conversation to sit down and unpack. But what that means for me is, you know, I started as a health coach, really in a response to my own illness and symptoms that I was going through. And just wanted to help as many people as I can. I found that when it came time to make decisions around health, it was so confusing. There's so much information, and it changes so rapidly. And then you throw in these quick fixes and biohacking, and you know there's a lot of options. And so what I got really good at was taking things that I had learned that had helped me, and really personalize them for the individual, meeting them where they're at. And that looks like, you know, as a health coach, I focused on, of course, nutrition and exercise. But I was, I guess, you know, deeper into it, where I was personalizing those approaches, making sure someone is not going outside of their capacity and killing themselves in the gym or being too restrictive with food. And then, looking at things like detox support, circadian biology, meaning, how working with sunlight and darkness at night, avoiding blue light at nighttime, getting blue light in the morning, avoiding it at nighttime, earthing, grounding, getting sunlight, clean water, even looking at the house and the environment. Are they using fragrances and cleaning products that are toxic? Are they getting good water? Are they putting electrolytes in their water? What's their blood work look like? And I just kept going down the rabbit hole and finding things that helped me and sharing that with clients. And a couple of years ago, came across the nervous system, and that's the somatic part of my integrative somatic coaching. And so I'm using now the nervous system as my main tool. Once we have the lens of the nervous system, we are now seeing through things from our body's perspective instead of relying on the external. When we have a lot of trauma, we're disconnected from our intuition, from our little voice inside of us that nudges us towards what's next for us, and we're relying on everybody else. And so, big part of what I do is teaching my clients how to feel. Again, people either come into this work feeling too much, I'd say their hair is on fire, or they don't feel anything at all, maybe a blend of the two. And so we're reconnecting with them, with their body, and from there, all kinds of options with, somatic experiencing, and use a little bit of Feldenkrais, a little bit of parts work, ultimately building capacity, learning to regulate. And this is a huge journey. And, as someone who has been through that myself, it's really easy to get stuck in a modality that we think is going to be helpful for us, and it may be, but is it helpful right now? And so I'm kind of taking the same personalization route that I did with my health coaching and supporting them from more physical and nutritional side of things, and then meeting them in the deep waters and doing little bits at a time with the nervous system support. And they're also getting ongoing support in between sessions that I have found is kind of the bread and butter, because trauma is an everyday thing, and we need help with that. And again, just trying to support people as much as I can, and helping them with what I knew that I needed in those moments.
We hear a lot. Oh, I hear a lot. I see a lot on Instagram about somatic coaching, even on LinkedIn. So for the people who aren't familiar, can you explain what that is?
Sure. Somatic is body. And so the typical traditional route that it sounds like you've been doing for a really long time, I'd be curious in hearing, how that's changed. But traditionally, it's a psychoanalyzation, so you're in the head, and we are revisiting old traumas as a way to desensitize ourselves and heal. And what I have found, and what the somatic believes, the folks believe, is that revisiting these traumas is just increasing, is re-triggering the nervous system, and it may be something that's actually keeping us stuck. I think there's a time and a place for understanding how our trauma shaped us and what that means, but staying in the past just creates more dysregulation in the now. And so instead of analyzing, we would maybe use a memory to get into a feeling in the body. So these are implicit memories. These are things that we remember about certain situations. So you can kind of start by describing that, and what would eventually happen when somebody's built the capacity to feel and listen to their body. Well, they may notice some tension. They may notice some tightness. They may notice pain. They may notice emotions coming up. And what's likely happened up until that point is when we feel things in our body, we want to fix them. We want to run away from them. we want them to go away. And that's likely how we were met by our caregivers or the people taking care of us when we were younger. And so just by what we're doing in this work is we are moving towards these sensations, emotions, symptoms with curiosity, with care, with empathy, and with compassion. And we're letting them express themselves. This is kind of like going to completion, meaning if I have an unresolved trauma, it's not complete. And so say there's a larger person that is holding me down, and I don't have the option of fighting or running away, flighting. So I learn to shut down. Maybe I fawn. I please them to get them to like me. And we learn that as a protective mechanism that, if there's a threat, that I'm just going to shut down. And if that becomes habitual, then we get chronic symptoms because our nervous system gets stuck and shut down, or other people get stuck in really high activation. They're getting anxiety and diarrhea and different symptoms like that. But ultimately, dysregulation just means that we're stuck. It doesn't mean that we don't have emotions, that big, bad, scary things don't happen, but we learn how to meet them and move through them instead of suppressing, avoiding, and storing them in our tissue. And so this is, you've heard the body keeps the score.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. We're working with the body.
That is so interesting. And I've had guests on about somatic healing. And I don't mean to laugh, but they've all told me, because I have a chronic cough, I've had it for 9 years, they said that I must have some stuck trauma in me that I need to let out. But I mean, I don't know. My cough happened midway during my husband's Alzheimer's journey. So I don't know, like, is it a coincidence? I also was exposed, and working in a retail store to the home oils burning. That could have had something to do with it, secondhand smoke. But trauma on top of trauma, emotional trauma is my problem, not physical trauma, more emotional trauma. And I think, I started having migraines when I was 14. I had 3 other siblings. They didn't have it, but I've always been a sensitive person. Later in my adult life, I found out I'm an empath, which explains a lot of why I felt things and, just kind of had intuition about things. I think excuse me, you hear more now, Mitch. I think it's really interesting because it's really more public now how our nervous system affects our body, how our gut affects our brain, our nervous system affects our body. And to, acknowledge your feelings. I was brought up at a time, I'm going to be 68, Lord willing, in 3 weeks. I was brought up in a time you didn't discuss your feelings. Nobody cared about your feelings. And if you cried, that was weakness. So you learn to suppress and suppress. And when you keep suppressing your feelings, it's going to come out as a disease.
Yep.
Isn't? And you're hearing more about that. So much more about that. I'm curious, in your practice, do you see more men being more open to getting coached?
Well, first I'm going to go back and just kind of normalize, the symptom that you're describing of the coughing, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I need all the help I could get.
Oh, yeah. Trauma shows up in so many different ways. We learn to trust that whatever is showing up is the next thing. And these 2 experiences of living in toxic environments is what it sounds like, and then, dealing with someone who is has a chronic disease that, is at the end of their life. Both of those are definitely can be traumatic situations. And so a lot of times the body is so intelligent that if we're not able to express or be aware of our feelings because we don't have the capacity to be with the intensity of the feelings that are there, maybe because we learned that they're wrong or bad, and so we, like you said, shut down. What's going on is our body is very intelligently expressing what the body is not ready to feel. So
interesting.
The symptoms can manifest in so many different ways, and they can change. And so for me, someone dealing with chronic disease, you mentioned the gut, when I showed up at therapy, I could eat one time a day. I could only eat red meat and salt. I was 140 pounds. And now could you diagnose me with gut issues based on my symptoms? 100%. Was there anything wrong with my gut? Not at all. This was fascial, so the layer just under the skin holds a lot of tension. And so when I would go into therapy, I would start to burp. And so, especially around difficult situations that were coming up, so I'm renegotiating and taking those old memories, those wounds, to completion, saying the thing that I needed to say, telling them, moving away from the things that didn't feel safe, moving towards the things that do feel safe. And over time, very quickly actually, I was able to overcome food sensitivities and gain weight back, and that showed me that, wow, this stuff works. And it's just meeting what is here now and learning to give that some space, give it what it needed that we didn't get when we were young, and so that it feels safe enough to move on and to let go. And then going back to your comment about feelings, I get that, especially as a man, and being told that, these feelings aren't allowed to be here. They don't belong. You need to suck it up and not be a wuss.
Yes.
Or, whatever flavor that we get, and, your question was, so as a man, I had to learn to allow myself to be here, fully myself. Parts of me, I welcome back. And when we push away and suppress parts of ourself, we replace that with things like people-pleasing, black or white thinking, perfectionism, all or nothing. And we think that that's who we are. I'm a hard worker. I like to get it right. I like other people to be happy. And I really want to understand things, right? And so I can fix them, figure them out. Those are all trauma responses. Those are not personality traits. So we are buried underneath all this conditioning the world has told us how to act. And we're being good little boys and girls, and like we were told, because we don't want to get punished, and we're being the good little, the quiet little girl, or the tough boy, And so a lot of the trauma work is welcoming back and learning, meeting who we are, learning to express our individuality, and that definitely is happening with men too. You ask, are men open to this work? And what I would say is, I think the planet, the human collective, is waking up to this, and we have generation and generation. It's generational trauma. If you don't heal your demons, they will raise your children. And we've been so unaware of the trauma that has been passed down. This generation is waking up and feeling it, right? And so more and more, I'd say men and women. I also see women doing it more, but we're all interested and curious. And even if you're not like actively seeking it, a part of you is, I'd say unconsciously. And so a lot of people that come to me, they are willing to do the work because they've had their butts handed to them. They've tried everything. Nothing seems to work, and they don't have any other options. And so I love people showing up in that state because that means we can work with something, So my job's not to convince people. It's to wave the flag to say, hey, if this sounds like you, there is answers. I've been in a chronic disease and sick for 20 years, and I just started sleeping 2 months ago, got off medication, and, all of these things that I never thought were possible when I healed my nervous system. It was never the diagnosis or the isolated organ, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Those things are certainly need support, but ultimately I'm going to bet that if this resonates with you, then there's nervous system dysregulation at the core of our symptoms and trauma.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. I'm in the caregiving world. I belong to a lot of caregiving groups when my husband had Alzheimer's, and I could tell you, Mitch, that the life of a caregiver is shorter statistically than those who aren't, and that is because of the stress and not being able to take care of yourself as you would like during caregiving, which is why I'm very grateful that I'm sitting upright and alive. But it really, trauma circumstances, it does take a toll on your body. And sometimes we don't realize it as we're living it. And, when you have to keep suppressing the emotion, as a young girl growing up in the 60s, I was told not to show emotion. Crying was a weakness. And, the boys definitely were. If a boy were to cry in school, that was like a disgrace back then. And even now, this is why I say all the time on my show, and I don't care if I sound redundant, we need, especially, to raise our boys to be able to express themselves in a constructive, positive, safe environment. And when my husband was dying, and I have a son, and his dad was dying, people had the audacity to say, be strong, and we shouldn't cry. Well, being the Jersey girl that I am, Mitch, I had to set them straight, because we are strong. We've been strong. We're not robots. We're human beings. And then when, my mom, God bless her, she was old school, and telling my son, oh, be strong for your mom. I'm like, no, don't tell Josh that. He does not have to be strong. Let him cry. Let him release letting him release his feelings. Excuse me. And even though my husband died, I'll be 6 years in January, but this is the time of year 6 years ago where he was starting to progress, I checked in with him. How you doing, Josh? I know it's a tough time of year. How's it going for you? I encourage him to talk about his feelings, which I wish more parents would do.
Well, what you're describing there is just a reminder that, looking at both sexes, that we didn't come into this world with an owner's manual. In indigenous tribes and humans for generations before, modern times, trauma was something that we handled collectively as a tribe or a small community. It was normal. It was practiced. And I would even say it is the most innate human thing that we have, is to learn to process and to express, instead of suppressing, right? So that's what has to happen. We don't have to. It's so great that we're having these conversations about caregiving, about these stressful times in life, about being a trauma therapist. So many people in the helping arts get burnt out because they don't have the owner's manual. They don't know how to release these emotions because we have the conditioning that says you're not good enough if you are. You're a wuss or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can. It's so important for these different minorities that are dealing with a lot of stress to learn how to express this stuff and to normalize letting it out. But if you look around, society is set up in a way to keep us from slowing down, from meeting these parts of ourselves. We're encouraged to tell boys to not cry, for girls to be seen and not heard, for girls to be people-pleasing, and for all of us to be perfect, or else we're going to be outed for not being good enough or too much or whatever. And so these are the patterns that have to be discussed for us to heal so that we can see them and do something different. And what I know is that I have men in my work that are completely not open to doing therapy. And when they're talking to me, they don't know that they're doing therapy. And these
That's
guys,
great.
Because they're not doing trauma work, because they're just having a conversation with somebody that they feel safe with, and they do better than if I would tell them we're going to do it, because so much performance happens when we do that. They're just curious and showing up and interested and willing to try something new, and they don't know what they're doing is connecting with their body and learning, what do I want? What do I want to move towards? What do I want to move away from? How can I make better decisions in my business by being aware, by being in the moment, not predicting, not trying to be hyper-vigilant about repeating something for the past or trying to control the future. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It's actually stupid simple, and it's really hard, and that's why you need somebody to kind of hold your hand through the process. But it's one little step at a time.
Yes. I think it's beautiful, really, when a man can express his vulnerability. I think that's a positive trait, and I don't think it's anything. I think, and women, females, they could help their male partner in their life by giving them a safe place to be able to express what they're feeling without, judging them. I'll give an example. My son went to a wake, and the woman was my age. We actually went to grammar school together. And Josh said, Mama, I cried at the wake because Debbie's your age, and I thought of you. I said, that's okay, Josh, that you cried. It shows that you have feelings and you're compassionate. That's okay. That's a great trait to have. And that's, I may not be a great example, but that's what I could think of off the top of my head. And, like some people might just say, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do that out in public. But I just think it's just beautiful, a trait for a guy to have. I mean, if I were to date again, that's the trait that I would be looking for.
Oh, yeah.
Can a guy show their vulnerable side? Can they have emotion? That's just how I feel. But, I may not have felt that way 40 years ago. I don't even know. I don't remember anymore. But I think that it's... Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think emotional intelligence is sexy. I mean, it makes us feel seen
Yes.
and heard. It's not suppressive and dismissive and reactive, and we don't have to walk on eggshells and people please to get love. It's really nice to be seen and encouraged and validated and to have communication and to be able to discuss difficult things. I mean, that's what a real relationship is. And, when we can bring those things into the relationship, it's a different world.
Yes, and I think when people heal, they can be more open and receptive to having relationships. And I know it's really hard when you're guarded because it's a two-edged sword, right, Mitch? I know from my own personal experience. You're guarded because you've been hurt, so you don't want to let people in, but yet if you don't let people in, you're not building relationships. And you could be denying yourself of knowing a really great person. So it's that fine line there.
And when we've met, the compassion and the allowing of emotional expression, the encouraging of it, comes when we've met ourselves in those deep, dark places, because we can see ourselves and other people, and we get to see that we're all one. We're not separate. That's an idea. And the more we can, coming into this work, most of the people that I work with feel like a needle in the haystack. They feel like nobody else knows what's going on or feels the intensity that they do. And then they get into a group and they see, oh, no, this person, that person, and the next person, they all feel that way. And that the more that we're able to talk about it and normalize it, is we're all feeling that way all the time. And the more that we can see ourselves and other people, the more we're able to meet them and be open, and it feels easy to have a relationship. But if we're guarded and shut down and we're working through our stuff, or it's affecting us and we're not aware of it, then we stay stuck.
I want to backtrack, Mitch, because I forgot to ask you if you want to share, whatever you want to share about yourself, your story, because I know you went through a lot to get to where you are today. And I love when people share stories, because I'll tell you what, the best interviews is when someone shares a story when they went from having, a difficulty and they overcame it. And people love to hear that. They do. It gives people hope. So whatever you'd like to share about yourself, I would like to hear how you, what your difficulties were, if you want to share them, and how you overcame them, and your, your background, whatever you'd like to share.
Certainly. I want to clear my throat too. Let's see. I was 20 years old, and I was studying abroad in Europe for a summer. It was the World Cup, and I fell out of a second-story window drinking heavily, and hit my head. Had a traumatic brain injury. Now, I played football my whole life, and I'd hit my head a whole bunch, but it was nothing like this. Not long after, I didn't go to the hospital. I was more ashamed than anything else and didn't want anybody to know that I'd hurt myself. I thought I had a bad hangover and, ended up having, a really nasty concussion and TBI. I started having panic attacks and anxiety. I didn't sleep for 20 years. And that started then. I was very hypervigilant and had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't even know what that meant, because that wasn't something that I had felt or had language for, I should say. There was definitely a lot of trauma growing up, or lack of safety growing up, but I'm going to go back to that in a minute. So I go to the doctor, they tell me I have panic attacks. I'm having panic attacks, and I broke out in psoriasis over my entire body, which is very common after a big trauma, because so much is getting. It's kind of like so your system comes out of freeze. So we hear a fight, flight, and then there's a freeze. It's not as commonly talked about, and this kind of looks like a duck on top of water. So the duck is smooth, right? It looks like it's not moving very much, but underneath the water, those legs are going crazy, right? And that's all the dysregulation that was in my system that I was unaware of. And so a big accident is kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off. It feels kind of like getting your skin peeled off. It's too much, too fast, and the liver and the kidneys are not able to detox everything that's coming out of the system, and so it expresses to the skin. And so I had plaque psoriasis over my entire body overnight. And
wow.
So they gave me benzos, and they gave me an immune suppressant and sent me on my way. And I moved it later. I was in college at the time, and so I didn't think much about it. And after college, I moved into a house that had black mold in it. And Clemson University said it's one of the worst cases of black mold they've seen. We lived there for a really long time and had symptoms like insomnia and brain fog and joint pain. And eventually, when I went to the doctor, I found out that I had black mold I was dealing with. I had Lyme disease, which is a tick-borne illness. I had heavy metal poisoning in my body, heavy metal toxicity, and I had a metabolic issue like diabetes, basically, pre-diabetes. And so I got really lucky that I went to that doctor because the other doctors were just throwing drugs at me. This is functional medicine. And so they're looking for a root cause. Now, I moved out of the home with mold in it. I detoxed from Lyme disease with herbal antibiotics, and I started fasting and doing ketosis and reversed the metabolic issue. And I got better. I became, I fell in love with health and wellness. I started coaching people, and when I was going to see one of my first clients, I ran a stop sign, and I got hit by a dump truck, and it totaled my car. It killed my dog, and left me with it left me with post-concussion syndrome for like a year. So I went from the best shape of my life physically to I couldn't, walk more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time, and my digestion got really bad. I couldn't eat. I got food sensitivities. I wasn't sleeping. The medications weren't working. I was anxious all the time. And this is someone who is in a sensitized nervous system state where everything has become a threat. They're very hypervigilant. Adrenaline has washed the system, and they are like a cat on a hot tin roof. And so there's gut issues, immune issues, hormonal issues, you name it. And so after a year of that, I slowly made progress. My nervous system started to heal. And then it was COVID time, and I got long-haul COVID. Now, I got that 3 times. Yeah.
Oh, my.
I got long-haul COVID. I got it 3 times.
You need to write a book.
Three. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not even done yet, girlfriend. So it was, so I had long-haul COVID, and I got that 3 years in a row from 2019 to 2022. And that's kind of a BS term, meaning you could also call it chronic fatigue. You could also call it, what's it called, MCES, like chemical sensitivities. You can. It's basically the nervous system is overloaded. So I'm not a big believer in labels, but I just kept getting it over and over again until I started dealing with the trauma. And so I found my mentor, Irene Lyon, and I started working with her and doing her courses, and eventually did practitioner training with her this past year after doing those courses for a couple of years. And slowly the food sensitivity started to go away. That was probably the first thing. The next thing was being able to exercise again. So I kind of did that by accident after about 2 or 3 months. And just about 2 months ago, I got off of the benzodiazepine and started sleeping again. And so more things that I ever could have imagined. My body, and we're not talking management. And I want people to hear that because I think that's not the goal for me or my clients. I don't want to learn how to live with it or manage it. When people would tell me that, it really upset me. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to accept it and allow it to be here. That's a different thing. But I'm a big believer that we don't have to have these symptoms, that we can heal. I've seen so many people in this field, and I've seen myself. By no means am I a finished product, and I'm standing over here saying I've healed. but I can confidently stand here in front of everybody and say I am healing, and I can trust that, and it's, I'm moving in the right direction. It's amazing. I wake up every day, and I get these big breakthroughs every couple of weeks and months, and I love turning around and sharing with people like me that are highly sensitive, that have been through the chronic symptoms, that have tried everything and nothing seems to work. Even for those people, the answer to healing is 100% possible.
Does someone have to go through somatic coaching for a certain period of time to get their system back? Is it an ongoing process, or is there like that you get healed within a certain amount of time?
That's a super normal question. I would say everybody is different. There's a million ways to get up the mountain. And I don't think that you can heal trauma with only one approach. It's going to take multiple. And it's not going to work if we don't include the body. And it's not going to work if we don't include the brain. And so there's a lot of what I'm talking about is top down and bottom up. So top down is, typical CBT therapy and belief work, that type of thing. You got to have that. People will say in the somatic space, they kind of go back and forth against each other, and there's like a little bit of a war between the top down and the bottom up, and I think that's a bunch of BS as well. But you got to have both because yes, we watch animals in the wild, and they shake off trauma after being attacked by a threatening animal, and they shake it off. And so we look at that and we go, look, animals shake it off. But animals don't have belief like humans do, and if we don't address the belief, then the body will go back to the original factory setting. Right? And so
that's so interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I just want to finish with the timeline. Everybody wants to ask that question. I say put that question on the shelf and make it a lifestyle. Just like you brush your teeth, you do this work, right? It doesn't mean you have to always do it with a therapist. And that's what I'm trying to do with my clients, is teach them how to do this. Ultimately, nobody's coming to heal you. You can't go back and ask your parents to change or to heal or to ask your caregivers or your spouse. They can do it for you. You have to do it. That's your responsibility. And you can learn how to do that. And working with people is vital. So timeline, I always say some things shift really quick and other things take time. How long did it take us to get into the situations and the symptoms we've been experiencing? Maybe decades. And so also kind of going back to, we make this a lifestyle. It takes somewhere around like a year. It takes probably 2 years is a good estimate for someone getting out of chronic symptoms. It can take longer. But ultimately, pain and sorrow and horrible things happen. But if you have the education and, more importantly, the embodiment of this work, then you're going to have the tools to move through anything. You're going to be safe in any environment, and you'll be able to move through whatever difficult, no matter how difficult it is. And that's going to be all humans, I would say.
Wow. So somatic coaching, your integrative health coaching sounds so fantastic. And I think it's so important for the caregiving audience to know this, because I'll tell you what, Mitch, and I'm not the only one who's experienced this. I was exhausted, just downright exhausted from 10 years of caregiving. And I'm still feel like my body's recuperating. And my body's definitely not the same. Of course, I am older. But I think a lot of caregivers, they're running on adrenaline fumes. And when that is done with, it's like someone let the air out of your tires, or you've been hit by a Mack truck frontwards and backwards. You just feel like you got hit by a Mack truck. And I've heard a lot of caregivers say how they were exhausted for years. And I can believe it because sometimes I still feel exhausted. But I really think that caregivers should consider, definitely, your integrative health coaching. It just sounds like, they could do it now as a caregiver. I think it'd give them an edge up. I really do.
Oh.
I mean, I wish I knew you 10 years ago.
Well, you do know me now, and to the listeners, like, I would love to be a resource for you guys. What you're describing there, that exhaustion, it's very common. It's common when we've had trauma and we start to feel safe again, and then we step off the hamster wheel that we've been running on for decades and feel what it's like to never stop running from a tiger, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good sign. The fatigue is a good thing. The thing that happens when the fatigue comes that really hurts a lot of people is they don't know how to rest. They've been taught rest is bad, that they're not being productive, and they shame themselves because that's what we learned. And so we end up trying to fix the fatigue instead of moving through it and meeting ourselves where we're at. What's going on, too, could be our functional freeze is lifting. So when we've been in a state of prolonged stress, there's literally a tiger chasing us all the time. And if we're a caregiver, the tiger is always in our environment. Whether we're with the patient or not, the emotions, the hypervigilance, the thoughts of the future, I imagine, we're probably ignoring ourselves and taking care of the person. Kind of like you mentioned, there's no self-care, and there's no ability to take out the trash. So we just continue to throw the trash and make the baggage that we're carrying bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it gives out, and our body goes into collapse, and that's the freeze. And at this point, we're in a healing crisis ourselves, and if we don't have the tools to move through this, then we're heading for chronic disease and autoimmune and mystery illness.
Wow, I am so glad you came on my show, Mitch, because this is so important to know. And it is important for, I say caregivers, but for anyone, but especially for caregivers, to get that somatic coaching while you're caregiving, because the reality is, folks, and I'm not making this up, you can look it up, the mortality rate of caregivers was at 63%. It depends what age you are when you were a caregiver. The older you are, the higher it is. I would definitely, and I highly recommend, consulting Mitch and, see how it can help you, because I say this, and I mean from the bottom of my heart, and I know it sounds harsh, but I'm a Jersey girl. If you want to enjoy life during and after caregiving, you need to take care of yourself on all levels, mentally, physically, spiritually. You need to do that. And self-care is not selfish, folks. It is literally a matter of your life and death. And I really, that might sound harsh, but that's the truth. I've seen too many caregivers die right after their loved one or a couple of years later, and they're young. You need to take care of yourself. Mitch, I love talking to you. How can people get a consult with you and reach out to you?
I really appreciate that, Betsy, and just sending a big amen for everything you just said.
Thank you.
Folks can contact my website is mitchwebb.com. There's a contact page on there, and they can just shoot me a message. To anybody listening, I do free 30-minute consultations to anybody that's interested in this work to determine our fit. And what I'm offering now is one-on-one coaching. I also have a podcast called Rooted Conversations that's on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram at kmitchwebb. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
What's the name of your podcast?
Rooted Conversations is my podcast.
Rooted.
Rooted Conversations with Mitch Webb.
Okay. And you're on YouTube. I got to check that out. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Check it out. I just started it a couple weeks ago. I'm really excited about it. And I've also
congratulations.
Thank you so much. I've also got a free quiz for your audience where they can fill out some information and get some information on their nervous system state and how they can start to work with that. So all of this work, it starts with awareness, and so that's what this quiz is about. And if they're interested in the tools, there's also an offer to work with me, and so that's something you can look for as well.
And since you're in North Carolina, you do Zoom, so anybody anywhere in the world can coach with you. They could
absolutely. I work with clients all over the globe. I've got clients in Europe and West Coast and East Coast, and some here locally with me too.
That is wonderful, Mitch. I so enjoy talking to you. Didn't know you had a podcast. That wasn't on the information, but I'm glad you told me because I'm going to check it out, and then I could put that in the blog. So thank you for sharing your story. Is there anything else you would like to tell the audience as we wrap up?
I think if anything from this podcast has resonated with you and you're someone who's dealing with symptoms and you've tried everything and nothing seems to work, if this resonates with you, go do this work now. And there's so many awesome options out there. Check out my podcast. Check out my mentor, Irene Lyon. She's got an incredible YouTube. She's been doing this for 20 years. That's where I started. And just get started today. You don't have to do it all at once. That would be overwhelming. This work is all about one little drop at a time. And if you get in the hands of somebody good, they're going to understand that, and they're going to hold your hand through the process.
Yes, it takes time. You know, it took a long time to get to where our condition is, and it takes steps, time, and patience to, to progress. And we're always progressing. You know, we're always evolving. So I want to thank you so much, Mitch Webb, for having this interesting, delightful conversation. Thank you for being a wonderful guest. And I appreciate what you do and you sharing your story with us. Folks, all the information about Mitch Webb will be in the blog that Jeannie White, the station manager, writes and produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio Network, makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the listeners. If you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it's for free. I'm on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, Amazon Music, to name a few. Thank you for listening and subscribing, and tell your friends about this show. Mitch Webb is a wonderful resource. I'm here to help people. Mitch is here to help people, and we need your help. So share the podcast. Check out Mitch's podcast. And yes, I do believe in promoting other people's podcasts because I learn from other people, and I want people to learn. I want my audience to be informed. There's resources out there to help you, and I do not believe in withholding information that will help somebody. So I'm very grateful, Mitch, that you shared that you had a podcast, and I'm always looking for new ones to listen to because even I listen to other people's podcasts. Excuse me. And as I always say, you can follow me on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, W-R-Z-E-L. And as I always end my show with, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever before. And I just want to thank everyone again for listening. Be safe out there. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Bye-bye now.